Welcome, Bryce Henson on the me&my Health Up podcast show. So great to have you on. How are you today?
Anthony, thank you so much. I'm doing fantastic and really appreciate you having me on.
You're very welcome, and I look forward to listening or learning about how you empower your clients in terms of taking the easiest steps to increasing self-confidence, because that's today's episode. So really keen to get into that. But before we do that, I'd really like for you to share your backstory of how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah, great question. Well, I know your audience is spread out between, the U.S., Australia, but I'll kind of give you some insight to my path here in the U.S. But originally, I come from the Midwest part of the United States, a state called Michigan, which is about a 2-hour flight inward from New York. And something about the Midwestern United States, great place, amazing salt of the earth people, but not the fitness capital of the world. So I grew up athletic background, but really towards my teenage and early adult years going through university, fitness was not a huge part of my life. So it's really serendipitous. I'm the CEO of an international fitness franchise. And honestly, fast food was the staple of my diet for a long period of time. And fitness was not my forte. In fact, I graduated university about 20 pounds of body fat, overweight, about very little muscle frame on my body. And at that period of time, I got a job offer in Los Angeles, California. And I'm sure your viewers are familiar with Southern California, or at least know about it. The palm trees, the blue skies, the beaches, all that LA has to offer. So I was super excited to move there. But also LA can be the plastic capital of the world. So 21 years old, very little professional experience, not in shape, moved, homesick, not a lot of friend community at that point in my life. And being honest with you, unpeeling that onion, Anthony, I didn't have fitness in my life. And I lived that way for a couple of years, had more dark days than good. But fortuitous situation happened to me. A good buddy from university moved out to Southern California. We decided to live together. And something about Adam was his name, was my first fitness mentor. He had the six-pack abs, the glistening muscles, the confidence, the energy, the enthusiasm. I certainly looked up to that. And embarrassingly to admit, it took me a couple months to finally muster up enough courage to say, hey, Adam, can you show me a little about this fitness thing? And I'm so glad that he did. And he actually got my 12-week commitment on the front end to make sure that I was serious. And ultimately, over the next 2 years, but really hyper-focused over the period of 6 months, he introduced me to circuit training, to lifting weights, to clean nutrition, but most importantly, coaching and accountability, because I would love to look you in the eye, Anthony, and to your viewers and say, I would have done it by myself, but I certainly can't do that. But ultimately, off to the races I went, really over a period of 6 months, just completely transformed my physique, dropped 20 pounds of body fat, put on 20 pounds of lean muscle, but way more than important to that. And of course, you and your audience knows the value of health and wellness. It absolutely just changed my life, my energy, my enthusiasm, my vibrancy. I became one of the least performing sales rep of my company, all the way to the highest performing sales rep of my company, all because of fitness. So that was really what laid the foundation for me to get professionally in the, or at least have my own transformation, which led then to me professionally getting into the industry, being that I had the interest. And I'll be happy to color in those details. But that was the framework, really, how I became a not fit guy all the way to a fit guy, and really inspired within our industry.
Yeah, and you're really taking the industry forward now in terms of really tackling that obesity pandemic with your boot camp franchise, which is the fastest growing in the world.
Yeah, from an indoor fitness franchise perspective, we're leading the charge, which is very, very humbling, but also very, very exciting as well. And, we were just chatting before we went live just about, the state of the world and the global pandemic that we went through the last couple of years, which certainly COVID should be is front of mind. But really, I hope our audience has really taken a second to actually reflect and really see the value of health and fitness, because from a data perspective, by far the most people who are most severely impacted, whether hospitalized or even suffered fatality, were statistically obese. And when your body's obese, yes, from an aesthetic perspective, that's not a fun situation to be in. And it certainly, creates depression and anxiety and also confidence issues. But way more important than that, your body has to work, so much harder, your organs, your heart, just to basically keep you alive. And then when you have COVID or any other disease for that matter, because let's face it, COVID is not the first virus. It's not the last virus that's going to affect, humankind. But if your body has a weakened immune system because you're statistically obese, because you're not taking care of yourself, honestly, Anthony, you are a sitting duck. So I feel very compelled and called to spread health, fitness, to really put our society and world, for that matter, in a better position to combat COVID or whatever the next virus is that comes.
Fantastic. It's such a great mission to have. And you touched on confidence a number of times, certainly in terms of your story, how fitness has played a major part in increasing your confidence, not only just how you felt about yourself, but that translated into your work and your sales and your life. And essentially you mentioned the same with people that are obese or have weight, concerns, is that their self-confidence is lacking. And so there's obviously a tight connection between fitness and increasing self-confidence. And that's what we're going to discuss today is your view on taking easy steps towards increasing self-confidence. So where does a listener start in terms of their journey to wanting to become fit? Or if they're already fit, how can they even get fitter? And how does the self-confidence piece tie into that?
Yeah, no, great question, Anthony. And I want to actually attack it from a 30,000 foot view first, just about self-confidence and how to build that. And I have a couple of different strategies, but really if you break it down, and I learned this from a mentor of mine, which is so true, self-confidence really is just keeping the promises, not that you make to other people, it's keeping the promises to yourself first and foremost. And when you're around someone who has a high level of self-confidence, which really is just self-trust, it really means they make a promise to themselves and they keep that promise to themselves. When they set their alarm clock to go off in the morning, they don't hit snooze. They don't sleep, sleep an hour later than they should. They actually keep that promise they made when they set the alarm clock, and they execute that promise. So from a big picture perspective, from my strong opinion, is that if you want more self-confidence, you actually just need to keep the promise to yourself. And then, of course, the secondary aspect of that play is continue to stack wins. And Tony Robbins, who I'm a huge follower, I'm sure many of your audience follows as well, is famously known for saying progress equals motivation. So at the end of the day, if you continue to stack wins, what you do is create progress or momentum. And then ultimately you're more inspired to continue on that train and really gain more momentum and then ultimately more confidence as well. So that's big picture. And then from a tactical perspective, really, and we talked about, this is a health and fitness show, two specific ways, aside from just the general philosophy of stacking wins and ultimately keeping the promise to yourself. Number one is to become fit, is really to get fit. When you create fitness in your life, that is just a giant confidence booster. And of course, think about it when you break that down. If you decide to become fit, if you make a promise to yourself to become fit, and then ultimately you execute on that promise, your confidence goes through the roof. Of course, in addition to that, the other benefits, you feel better, the endorphins are running in your body. So ultimately that gives you more progress and gives you more motivation to continue on. And then of course, aesthetically, you're going to look better as well. And when you look better, when you feel better, ultimately that's confidence as well. And again, that's the value of fitness. And really what I like to say and teach our owners, teach our clients is fitness is the gateway drug to a better life. If you want to make more money, if you want to be more fulfilled, if you want to have better relationships, when you become fit, literally the doors open for you. So that's the first takeaway. And the second takeaway in terms of enhancing your fitness, aside from the general philosophy that I just shared, is really putting yourself into uncomfortable situations, which certainly fitness is, but also from an adventure, from an experience perspective, and traveling is an incredible way to do that. We were talking offline, you're from Sydney, Australia, and I've been to Australia once, but I've also, been fortunate to travel the world. And one of the biggest sources of confidence that I ever attained in my life was in 2010, I decided to have this dream. I always wanted to live in another culture, learn another language. So I decided to put myself on a one-way ticket from Los Angeles, California to a little island in the south of the world called Florianopolis, Brazil. And I ended up meeting my wife there, gained a Brazilian family. We were talking offline. My sister-in-law, who's Brazilian, lives in Perth, Australia. Just opened the doors to so many incredible experiences, learned the language fluently. So from a confidence perspective, by keeping the promises I made to myself, I always wanted to learn a second language. By putting myself out there from an adventure, from an experience perspective in an uncomfortable situation, I walked away from that experience, yes, with a wife, yes, with a Brazilian family, yes, with another language under my belt, but way more important, I literally developed my self-confidence that I can take with me the rest of my life. So hopefully, Anthony, that was maybe a little bit more than you bargained for, but really from a structural perspective, from a philosophical perspective, but also from some tangible action steps perspective, really empowering you and your audience to really be, to attain more confidence, which is the goal for all of us.
Yeah. So you mentioned that stacking the wins principle, which makes sense, like you have a win and then you go for another win and you build those wins and, that self-confidence builds momentum. So is it starting with making small promises to yourself and fulfilling those small promises, and maybe give some examples of some small steps someone can take just to build that win stacking for them?
Totally. Incredible question. And really, at the end of the day, it's not what you do once in a while, even if it's with an incredible amount of energy or effort behind you, that actually is what gains success or confidence. It's actually the little things, the consistent things that you do on a day-to-day basis. And interestingly enough, human nature, we're just wired to be typically like all in or all out. So someone who has never, been had a fitness component of their life, typically speaking, and I've seen this many times in my 10 plus years career in the fitness industry, they'll go from couch potato to all of a sudden, I'm going to go all in and literally work out 7 days a week. I'm going to eat perfectly, the perfect diet. I'm not going to do any cheat meals. And that happens, that lasts for like 7 days, but that is just not sustainable. And really what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for failure. So Anthony, what I would recommend in terms of stacking wins is, if you haven't been fit, if you haven't had that in your lifestyle, instead of all of a sudden saying, tomorrow I'm going to commit to myself to do 2-hour workouts 7 days a week and have a perfect diet, how about this? How about setting your alarm for 30 minutes earlier than you normally do? And how about you commit to 3 times during this week that you're going to get a 15 or 20 minute full body circuit. You don't have to work out an hour and a half or 2 hours. In fact, if you came cold turkey, your body's going to hate you for that to begin with. But if you can carve out 15 to 20 minutes 3 times a day, 3 times a week, 3 times a day would be excessive. But ultimately, start there. And then what will happen is, then you'll feel better. Okay. It might take, 8 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks, but that's enough time where the average adult can kind of wrap their mind around that. But ultimately, it's enough to also time to start seeing some progress. You're going to start to, feel better. You're going to get some early gains. Your nutrition is probably going to clean up a little bit. Instead of all of a sudden eating fast food 7 days a week, okay, and promising yourself you're never going to eat again, how about you cut that down to 2 or 3 times a week? How about you put down some soda, increase the water in your water intake? So these are just like little small things that you can do to start. And of course, if you're 100 pounds overweight, those few little changes in a silo, in a vacuum, aren't going to make a significant difference. However, if you do those consistently over time, what will happen is progress equals motivation. You'll actually start increasing your workouts to maybe a half an hour. Maybe you'll add a 4th workout in a week. Maybe you'll, increase your salad intake and actually take down a fast food 1 or 2 times a week instead of initially 7 down to 3 or 4. So these are little ways you can actually start the engine wheel to build more confidence, build more momentum. And honestly, that's what happened for me, to really put a bow on it. I talked about my fitness transformation really being 2 years of working out with my first fitness mentor, Adam, but really over a 6-month period. And really over that 6 month, I started working out initially 3 times, but in month 4, I kicked that up to 4 times a week. And I did that for a period of time until now. I work out 6-7 times a week. But again, it's small wins, keep on stacking those. That's the secret sauce to get started.
Yeah, and I loved how you touched on that thing of the flow-on effect. So you start doing that exercise in the morning and you're thinking, well, I'm on a roll, I'm feeling good. I don't want to undo that 30 minutes of exercise or that 20 minutes that I've done for the day with eating like a takeaway hamburger or something. You then think about, well, what can I eat to, I guess, further fuel that momentum? And as you mentioned, you tend to eat better as a result of working out. So, and then you start feeling better as a result of that. And then that flows on to the next day as, I want to work out. I can't wait to work out. So that's, I really like that flow-on principle that you get from fitness. Now, in terms of, you can get momentum, and you did touch on this, but I'd like to explore it a bit more, is that a client can make, some progress. They may be 4 weeks in, everything's going well, but a life event happens, whatever it may be, but something in life, gets in their way and, stops that momentum. So what do you recommend to your clients in order to get that momentum back? How can they get back onto that train and keep heading towards that direction they want to head with their fitness?
Totally. And really, Anthony, that's where it comes in, the value of coaching, because we all, we're human, right? Even the most consistent person is going to have their off days and going to have a life event. Something happens where it takes them off kilt. But having a support group, but specifically a coach and accountability coach is the best way, in my opinion. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we do at Fit Body, is because it has that group training. And I indicated earlier in the show, the secret sauce of me, connecting with my first fitness mentor was that accountability component, because without him, I would like to think I would have been successful, but I cannot tell you to be certain. So really it's getting a coach, getting an accountability partner, getting a group, a support group, if you will. That's the secret sauce, from my opinion. And really to kind of hammer that point home about the flow effect, if you will. I've never heard it put in that form, but it's so true. The opposite is also true. And I was actually just on a podcast about a week and a half ago, and I never heard it put this way before. But I was talking with the dietitian, and she said when she grew up, her mother realized that, sugar can have a very addictive, kind of mentality. And she said her mother taught her that sugar begets sugar, begets sugar, begets more sugar. So when you have a little bit of sugar, you just want to continue to have more. So while I showed the positive aspect of actually creating a fitness routine, creating more confidence, starting small, the opposite is also true, which you need to be careful of. But again, kind of going full circle, Anthony, that is the value of a fitness or accountability coach, and also with the group support, to basically get you back in the fold, hold you accountable, especially when life deals you a bad hand.
Yeah, it certainly makes a difference to surrounding yourself with people with a similar goal as to yours. And when you're feeling a bit unmotivated, someone else in the group is feeling very motivated, and they lift and inspire the ones that are not feeling great that day. And as a group, a collective group, you move forward and start to achieve really great outcomes. You mentioned earlier about philosophy around fitness, and I know through reading your bio and your background, you have an understanding of Stoic philosophy, that timeless wisdom. How do you apply Stoicism to your fitness and your work?
Well, thank you for that. An incredible question. And Stoicism is just a philosophy of the successful. And sometimes it can be, I guess, criticized for being a little cold at times. And I can see that. I think there's probably some truth to that. But really, at the end of the day, Stoicism is about accepting what hand you've been given. Because if you actually unpeel the onion, the vast majority of things are actually outside of our control. There's many things that you have influence on, but many times you're actually not in control of the full control of the situation. So it's about understanding what you are in control of, and then what you're not in control of, and literally do not focus 1 ounce of effort and energy on things you're not in control of, and focus full forward on things that you are in control of. So, you talked about, maybe a life event comes up, a tragedy comes up that takes you off the mats. And, when I say mats, that's our training floor. So it takes you out of the fitness workout, just to provide a little bit more clarity. And yeah, that can be something outside of your control. Something bad happens. But when you actually take a step back and realize, okay, the coast is cleared. Now, what is in my control? What is in my control is reach out back to my accountability group, reach out to my coach. Tomorrow, I'm going to schedule in my workout, first thing in the morning to get back on track. So from that perspective, I think, there's a lot of value and wisdom in the understanding of Stoic philosophy in terms of focusing completely on what you can control. The other aspect that I just really love, and you can apply it to fitness, you can apply it to business, you can apply it to life in general, is really the element of Stoicism about turning tragedy into triumph. And typically speaking, even on a bad hand of cards that you're dealt, I mean, look at the global pandemic, which shut, a lot of governments and businesses down. Very, very tragic situation, a lot of human life lost, et cetera. But if you actually unpeel it, there were some silver linings there. There was a lot of disruption that happened in the marketplace, a lot of innovation that happened. So again, another principle of Stoicism is you can cry and woe is me, take that mentality on the bad things that happen, or you can take a look at it and actually pivot. You can create, you can innovate and make the best of a bad situation. And many times, at least in my experience at life, the quote unquote tragedies were many times actually blessings in disguise with the right attitude, with the right approach, really understanding and execute against Stoic philosophy. And that's really what I love about the mindset component. So those are a couple takeaways that you can apply.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see where it's had a major part in your life and your journey to where you are today based on the story you shared. And I can see how it helps you coach groups of people in terms of them achieving their goals and keeping them aware that, there's only a certain element or a certain amount we can control, and there's an element that's out of our control, and just focus on what we can and in order to make that progress. And certainly, getting out of bed in the morning and putting your gym clothes on and heading down to the workout floor is something that's within our control.
Absolutely.
So I was really keen because you've had a lot of success around your own weight loss and the weight loss of others. I think the Fit Body franchise that you're the CEO of has helped about, around 1 million pounds of weight loss, which is an incredible number. What are your top tips for someone looking to lose weight?
Incredible question. Tip number one, which is not going to be probably front and center, but my second fitness mentor, actually, who at the time he was in his early 50s, he would do, bodybuilding shows. He had a lean physique, but really 6-pack abs and all. He said, Bryce, you have to drink more water in order for you to lose weight and get lean. And it seemed a little counterintuitive at the time, but the reality of the situation, of course, hydration is incredible for your body. But many times people overeat, not because they're hungry, they feel that's a sensation, but they're actually dehydrated. So by you increasing your water intake, and I don't know the metric, equivalent, but to upwards of 1 gallon a day, will ultimately just change your physique and change your life if you do that consistently. The second thing, and again, I'm going to give you not necessarily the most common answers, so that way your audience can take action on things that are that really, really work, but maybe not so obvious. The second aspect is actually increasing your sleep to at least 7 to 8 hours a day, because at the end of the day, yes, you need to work hard, you need to eat well, you need to train your body, which will help sculpt a better physique for you. But rest and recovery is just so important. So yes, I'm a hard charging CEO and I have a lot of work on my plate, just like you and the rest of your audience. We live in a very fast paced world. But at the end of the day, I do not skimp on my sleep. I get a solid 7 hours and I'm rested. I'm recovered. I feel better. And then ultimately I can make better decisions while I'm awake, such as drinking water, such as getting to the gym, getting my boot camp workouts in, and eating clean nutrition. So the sleep component is just cannot be overlooked for fat loss and just for general health. And then of course, it really all comes down to nutrition. Now, human movement, the fitness aspect and the nutrition aspect, technically speaking, realistically, they're on one kind of, one conundrum, if you will. However, if you break it apart, they're actually two separate things. The benefit, though, is, as we talked about, progress equals motivation. Typically, they go hand in hand. When someone gets up and gets a great workout in, their palate is more inclined to be open to a lean salad or a lean piece of lean protein, a healthy, fruit or vegetable, etc. So what I would say, though, if you really, really want to focus in that weight loss component, you need to do both because they work in tandem. But really from a body composition and a weight loss perspective, your nutrition is going to be far, far more important. And there's a famous adage saying you can't outtrain a bad diet. And that is so true. So it's really what you put in your mouth. So, making sure you have ample lean protein, fruits, vegetables, things that you inherently know, but are you doing? So that would be really the third principle. If you're serious about, weight loss. And really to kind of put a bow on the fourth one, I'm going to revisit it. You got to get an accountability partner. You got to hire a coach. You got to get a support group. And I just say that because I've been in this game for a long time. And the people that really, succumb and really connect with other peers and have that accountability coach, ultimately, by and large, they win.
Yeah, so true. All those ones that you mentioned are awesome for recovering, and it's essentially in the recovery process is where the muscle grows, anabolism happens. So obviously in the gym workout, catabolism happens. And you're breaking down muscle tissues, but in the sleep and the rest and recovery is essentially where the muscles rebuild and grow. And I'm glad you touched on those points because I agree with you. They're often overlooked, and it's all about intense workouts and really pushing your body. And the harder you push it, the the quicker you'll get the results. But you've really touched on points where it's balancing the workout with a holistic lifestyle, which you essentially, suggested around drinking water, getting a good night's sleep, and eating nutritious food is all, is all about that muscle tissue rebuilding and growing. And obviously, as part of that is, the fat burn if you are in a calorie deficit. And that fourth point around accountability is so true, because it's not only, you've seen the proof from it in terms of your results, but obviously you see it with your clients' results through having the group and the accountability as part of the offerings. So I loved how you touched on the holism and the recovery part, because I agree with you, it's often overlooked.
Definitely. And I appreciate that. And, at the end of the day, Anthony, like, coaches need coaches too. And I'm a fit guy, rightfully so. I know I talked about my backstory not being fit. Now I'm a super fit guy, and that's a good thing. That's expected, right? Otherwise, I should not be the CEO of a fitness franchise. But I also want to be very candid with you as well. I'm a human as well. And I do know what I do know to be true when I'm at my own Fit Body Boot Camp with my coaches actually pushing me, and I'm actually a client, because ultimately that's how I still am grounded to the business. I'm a client of Fit Body Boot Camp, an owner of Fit Body Boot Camp. I'm a CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp. I'm a coach of Fit Body Boot Camp. But I can tell you with certainty, I always get a better, more intense workout with my team and my coaches pushing me than I do by myself. So, kind of circling back on that accountability piece as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all need to be held account. So humans work together in order to achieve an enhanced outcome. And obviously you wouldn't have achieved that 1 million pounds of weight loss with your clients if it wasn't all working together towards a common goal of weight loss. My next question is just around the common misconceptions around weight loss. What do you commonly hear that you think, I wish that rubbish wasn't, put out there, all this misinformation around weight loss? What are the myth busting that you'd like to do?
I love this question. The first one is, there are healthy foods that can make you fat if you eat them a lot. So sometimes what happens is, people say, brown rice or salmon, very healthy. They are. Salmon's very, very healthy for you, but it's also very high in fat. Okay. So when you break it down, ultimately a calorie of fat has a gram of protein has 4 calories as well as carbohydrates, but ultimately a gram of fat has 9 calories in that. So ultimately you can very easily overdo it on healthy fat, which is really, really important. So that would be probably the first misconception that I like to bust. The second one is actually more on the human movement aspect of it. And a lot of times, most of our clients are actually females. And the common misconception is resistance training or strength training, when someone's lifting weights, as an example, especially from a female perspective, the common, misconception is, I'm going to get big and bulky like the Hulk if I lift some weights. And that could not be further from the truth. In fact, most guys who have a lot more testosterone in their body have a hard time putting in muscle, and definitely females do. So by lifting weights and by, creating resistance training in your program, which you hit on, actually during the workout itself, you're actually breaking down muscle tissue, and that's why recovery, which we talked about, is so important when you're building back up. But when you build it back up, it's leaner, it's tighter, it's denser, and you actually will build lean muscle. And actually, for females, it's going to make you look more toned first and foremost, and then your body is going to burn calories at a higher rate. Your metabolic conditioning is going to increase for upwards, and I've seen studies upwards of 36, 48 hours, whatever the exact number of hours is. The science is out there saying that when you put on lean muscle mass, your body's going to burn way more calories after that workout than if you just do steady state cardio alone. So the common misconception is like, hey, lifting weights will make me big and bulky and really won't help with fat loss. And that's just not true. It'll actually help burn fat on your body and actually make you look lean. So those would probably be the two that I hear the most that I really like to tackle.
Yeah, I love those points. I mean, we very much resonate, or I resonate with what you're saying around, you've touched on holism, you've touched on moderation and not overdoing it, from a fitness point of view, in terms of, not allowing adequate recovery between workouts, and then also not overdoing the healthy food because at the end of the day, you're consuming calories as well. So, and you can certainly overdo it on the good side, and not take you towards your goal, essentially, like you would. Now,
you certainly can. And the last point, sorry to interject, I really want to hit home too, which is just a good coaching tip, but from a nutrition perspective, marketing is on the front of the label. The actual nutrition is on the back of the label. So marketing companies, I'm a marketer too, can be a little misleading at times. So just be, very, very cautious. Doesn't matter what it says in the front, low fat, low sugar, et cetera, but they stack it with other bad things. So that would be my last tip. Make sure you're reading the nutrition labels and don't fall for whatever's in the front of the box.
That is gold, because at the moment, when there's a fad, the companies latch onto it. Like at the moment, it's all plant-based. Everything will, say plant-based, but the substitute to the plant-based could be absolute rubbish. It could be artificial. That's a top point actually that the listeners should take away is, and then same with gluten-free, like gluten-free, dairy-free. They just fill it with other things that are not so good.
Totally.
Yeah. Just before we wrap up, how can the listeners best connect with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The best way for our global website is just to follow us or go to our website at fitbodybootcamp.com. That's fitbodybootcamp.com. And then I would love to continue to add value for your listeners from a health perspective, from a wellness perspective, from a mindset perspective on all my social media channels, which from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are real Bryce Henson, not to be confused with fake Bryce Henson. So that's where you can find me on social.
Fantastic. And for the listeners, I'll include all those links in the show notes so you can go directly to the show notes and connect with Bryce. Now, Bryce, the final question is your final words of wisdom to the listeners.
My final words of wisdom, be like Nike and just do it. I think at the end of the day, we all have concerns and fears and frustrations and baggage, and life hits hard, right? But ultimately, in your mind, that deep burning in your soul, like I'm meant for something more. You would not be tuned into Anthony's awesome podcast if you didn't want to better your life. So I'm here to say, yes, there's probably a million reasons why, valid reasons that you have obstacles in your way, the kids, the school, the work. I mean, all that is true. But at the end of the day, that's not what's going to get you to your goal if you use them as excuses. So be like Nike, just do it. Start small, and ultimately you'll end big.
Fantastic. I love those concluding words, Bryce Henson. And I really appreciate you putting aside the time in your busy schedule to come on and empower and enlighten our listeners. So thank you so much, Bryce.
Anthony, it was a pleasure. Super grateful to be here, and just want to give you acknowledgement as well. This is an incredible conversation, well prepared, and I can see why you and your podcast has had so much success.
Thank you so much, Bryce. And to the listeners, thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up. Really appreciate it. Please share it with others that could benefit. Anyone that's looking to lose weight or improve their fitness, this is a great starting point, is this episode with Bryce Henson. He really knows what he's talking about. He resonates with my philosophy, and I thoroughly recommend you share the episode, like it, leave a review so we can get it out to more people. And thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned in for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up.